The emergency broadcast crackled across every communication channel in the Galactic Defense Network. Admiral Zexathari of the Valerian Republic pressed his scaled fingers against the control panel, his three eyes focused on the incoming distress signals flooding the command center. "Admiral, we're receiving urgent requests from 17 different sectors," his communications officer announced, her voice trembling. "The Krexmori swarm has broken through the outer defensive lines. They're moving toward populated systems faster than we anticipated." Zexathari had seen many battles in his 40 cycles of service, but nothing like this. The Krexmori were a hive-minded species that consumed everything in their path, converting organic matter into more of their kind. What started as a small incursion 3 months ago had exploded into a galactic crisis. "What's our current defensive capability?" he asked his tactical officer. "Stretched beyond limits, sir. We have the Centaurian fleet holding the Epsilon sector, the Draknari forces defending the trade routes near Proxima, and our own ships trying to maintain the blockade at Gateway Station. But the swarm just split into 7 different groups. We can't cover them all." The holographic display showed the devastating reality. Red dots representing Krexmori ships moved like a disease across the star map, while the scattered blue points of Allied forces looked pathetically small in comparison. "Sir, incoming priority transmission from the Galactic Council," the communications officer reported. The image of Chancellor Morden appeared on the main screen. The elderly Altarian leader looked exhausted, his normally perfect ceremonial robes wrinkled and stained. "Admiral Zexathari, the situation has become critical. We're authorizing you to send reinforcement requests to every known spacefaring civilization, regardless of their current galactic standing." Zexathari nodded grimly. "Understood, Chancellor. We'll contact the Zephyrians, the Neo-Martian Collective, and the Independent Mining Consortium. There's more," Mordoun continued. "The Council has also approved contact with the newer civilizations, including the humans from the planet they call Earth." A ripple of surprise went through the command center. The humans were still considered a young species, having only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Most galactic civilizations viewed them as primitive and inexperienced. "Sir, with respect," the tactical officer interjected, "the humans have never participated in a major galactic conflict. Their ships are basic, their weapons are crude projectile-based systems, and they've never faced anything like the Krexmori." Chancellor Mordoun's expression was grim. "At this point, every ship matters. Even if they can only serve as support or evacuation vessels, we need all the help we can get. Send the request." After the transmission ended, Zexathari turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel to Earth's military command. Use their primitive radio frequencies if necessary." The process took longer than usual. Human communication technology was indeed basic compared to galactic standards, relying on electromagnetic radiation rather than quantum entanglement networks. When the connection finally established, a human face appeared on screen. The human was middle-aged with graying hair and stern features. He wore a simple uniform without the elaborate decorations common among galactic military leaders. "This is General Martinez, Earth Defense Command. We received your transmission, Admiral. Our xenolinguistics team is still processing the full message, but we understand you're requesting military assistance against a hostile alien force." Zexathari was surprised by how quickly the humans had responded. Most new civilizations took days or weeks to process first contact with the broader galaxy, yet these humans seemed remarkably adaptable. "General Martinez, I am Admiral Zexathari of the Galactic Defense Network. We are facing an existential threat to all sentient life in this galaxy. The Krexmori swarm has overwhelmed our defenses and is spreading rapidly. We're requesting any military support your species can provide." The human general listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions about enemy capabilities and tactical situations. His questions were surprisingly sophisticated for someone from such a young civilization. "Admiral, I need to consult with our leadership, but I can tell you that humanity doesn't abandon allies in need. How much time do we have?" "The swarm will reach the Kepler sector within 72 hours. If they take those systems, they'll have access to the main trade routes and can spread throughout the inner galaxy within a standard galactic month." "Understood. Give us 6 hours. We'll have an answer for you." The transmission ended, leaving Zexathari staring at the tactical display. 6 hours was an incredibly short time for any government to make such a momentous decision, yet the human had spoken with quiet confidence. "Sir," his science officer spoke up, "I've been reviewing the files on human capabilities. Their technology might be primitive, but their planet is classified as a Class 12 death world." Zexathari turned. Most inhabited planets were Class 3 or 4 environments, comfortable worlds where evolution proceeded gradually. Death worlds were planets where survival required constant adaptation to extreme conditions. What kind of conditions are we talking about? Extreme weather patterns, dangerous predators, toxic plants, natural disasters, and gravity that's nearly twice galactic standard. According to the surveys, 90% of known species couldn't survive on Earth's surface for more than a few hours without environmental suits. And humans evolved there naturally? Not only evolved, sir. They became the dominant species. They eliminated or domesticated every major predator on their planet and spread to every climate zone, from frozen wastelands to burning deserts. This information cast the humans in a different light. Any species that could thrive on such a hostile world had to possess remarkable resilience and adaptability. 5 hours and 37 minutes later, the communication channel activated again. General Martinez appeared on screen, but this time he wasn't alone. Several other humans in different uniforms stood behind him. "Admiral Zexathari, I've discussed your request with our global leadership. We're prepared to offer military assistance, but I need to be clear about our capabilities and limitations." "Of course, General. Any support is appreciated." "We can deploy the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet immediately. 12 ships total, including 3 heavy cruisers, 6 destroyers, and 3 support vessels. We can have them at your coordinates within 18 hours. Zexathari was impressed despite himself. 18 hours was remarkably fast deployment for any military force, especially one traveling interstellar distances. "However," Martinez continued, "our weapons and defensive systems are built on different principles than what you're probably used to. We use kinetic weapons, explosive warheads, and electromagnetic pulse devices. Our ships are heavily armored, but not as fast as your vessels." "Understood. Any additional firepower will be valuable. There's one more thing, General. The Krexmori are not like conventional enemies. They're a hive mind that converts biological matter. They show no mercy and never retreat. Are your people prepared for that kind of conflict?" For the first time, the human general smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Admiral, humans have been fighting total wars for our entire recorded history. We understand what it means to face an enemy that won't negotiate or surrender. We'll be ready." As the transmission ended, Zexathari felt something he hadn't experienced in weeks: hope. Maybe these primitive humans couldn't turn the tide of battle, but their confidence was infectious. In 18 hours, they would find out what Earth's Deathworlders could do against the galaxy's greatest threat. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Determination, watching the swirling patterns of hyperspace outside the viewport. Around her, the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet moved through the void at speeds that would have seemed impossible just decades ago. The 12 ships of humanity's response force were heading toward their first major galactic conflict. "Captain, we're receiving tactical updates from Admiral Zexathari's command," reported Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez from the communications station. "The Krexmori have accelerated their advance. They've already consumed 3 orbital stations in the outer rim." Chen studied the incoming data on her command screen. The alien admiral had been generous with intelligence, sharing detailed scans of enemy ships, tactical patterns, and biological analysis of the Krexmori themselves. What she saw made her stomach tighten. The Krexmori ships were organic constructs, grown rather than built. They moved in coordinated swarms, using hit-and-run tactics to overwhelm defenders before descending on populated areas to harvest biological material. Conventional galactic forces relied on energy shields and plasma weapons that were effective against traditional spacecraft but struggled against the adaptive organic hulls of the swarm. "Ma'am, Admiral Morrison is requesting a fleet conference call," announced the communications officer. The holographic display activated, showing the faces of all 12 ship captains in the expeditionary force. Admiral Morrison, commanding from the heavy cruiser UES Defiance, looked as stern as ever. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're 6 hours out from the combat zone. I want to make sure everyone understands what we're walking into. These Krexmori aren't just another hostile species. They're a galactic-level threat that's already forced the evacuation of 14 star systems." Captain Williams of the destroyer UES Retribution leaned forward. "Sir, our weapon systems are completely different from what the galactic forces have been using. Do we know if our kinetic rounds will be effective against organic ship hulls?" "Intelligence suggests they will be," Morrison replied. "The Krexmori have adapted their defenses against energy weapons, but they haven't encountered mass driver rounds or explosive warheads. Our projectiles should penetrate their hulls more effectively than plasma bolts." Captain Chen activated her microphone. "Admiral, what's our primary objective? Are we supporting the galactic forces or operating independently? We'll be integrated into their defensive grid, but with significant tactical autonomy. Admiral Zexathari has agreed to let us use our own combat doctrines. The aliens fight in spread formations using long-range energy weapons. We're going to show them how humans handle a swarm." 6 hours later, the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler sector. The scene before them was unlike anything they had encountered in their brief spacefaring history. The galactic defensive line stretched across several light hours, with ships from dozens of different species maintaining a loose perimeter. Their vessels were elegant constructs of metal and energy, sleek and beautiful even in a war zone. Plasma bolts and particle beams created a light show across the darkness as they engaged the Krexmori scouts. Beyond the defensive line, space itself seemed to writhe with organic movement. The Krexmori swarm was a living carpet of ships, each one pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. They moved with disturbing coordination, like cells in a massive organism. "Jesus," whispered Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez. "How many of them are there?" The tactical officer checked his sensors. Initial count shows over 3,000 individual vessels, ranging from fighter-sized organisms to creatures larger than our heavy cruisers. Admiral Zexthari's face appeared on the main communications screen. The alien admiral looked relieved to see the human ships arrive. "Admiral Morrison, welcome to the Kepler defense line. I'm transmitting tactical coordinates now. We need you to reinforce Sector 7, where the Centaurian fleet is taking heavy casualties." Morrison nodded. "Understood, Admiral. We'll be in position within 30 minutes. What can you tell us about their current attack patterns?" "They're probing our defenses, testing for weak points. Our energy weapons can damage them, but they regenerate quickly. They seem to learn from each engagement, adapting their movements to avoid our firing solutions." "Copy that. We're implementing Protocol 7. Chen saw the confusion on the alien admiral's face. Protocol 7 was purely human military doctrine developed during the Mars colonial wars. It involved accepting higher risk to achieve decisive tactical advantage. The human fleet accelerated toward Sector 7, moving in a tight formation that would have seemed reckless to galactic observers. The Centaurian ships were indeed struggling, their graceful vessels dancing through space as they tried to avoid the organic projectiles fired by Krexmori bioships. "All ships, This is Admiral Morrison. Weapons free. Target priority is the larger organisms. Show them what kinetic energy can do. The UES Defiance fired first. Its main railgun sent a tungsten penetrator round screaming across space at a significant fraction of light speed. The projectile struck a large Krexmori bioship center mass, and instead of the energy absorption that galactic weapons experienced, the kinetic impact tore completely through the organic hull. The creature's death was visible from thousands of kilometers away, its bioluminescent patterns flaring bright before going dark. Biofluid leaked into space, freezing instantly in the vacuum. The other human ships opened fire in sequence. Mass driver rounds, explosive missiles, and electromagnetic pulse warheads crashed into the Krexmori formation. The swarm's coordination faltered as several larger organisms died outright, their death throes disrupting the hive mind's local network. "Multiple confirmed kills," reported Captain Williams. "The kinetic rounds are punching straight through their hulls. They don't seem to have any defense against physical projectiles." On the galactic command frequency, alien voices expressed amazement and confusion. They had never seen Krexmori ships destroyed so quickly or efficiently. Admiral Zexathari's voice cut through the chatter. "Human ships, that was exceptional work. How did you achieve such penetration?" Captain Chen answered for the fleet. "Admiral, our weapons don't use energy that can be absorbed or deflected. A chunk of metal moving at 30 kilometers per second creates kinetic energy that has to go somewhere. Even organic hulls can't just absorb that kind of physical impact." The tactical situation was shifting rapidly. The Krexmori swarm, which had been steadily pressing against the galactic defensive line, suddenly contracted into a tighter formation. Their coordination patterns changed as they tried to process this new threat. "They're adapting," observed the tactical officer aboard the UES Determination. "The smaller organisms are clustering around the larger ones, probably trying to create layered defenses." Morrison's voice came over the fleet channel. "All ships implement Formation Delta. We're going to punch through their center and split their swarm." Formation Delta was an aggressive tactic that involved the human ships moving in a spearhead formation, concentrating their firepower on a single point while using their superior acceleration to avoid being surrounded. It was risky, but it could shatter enemy formations. The 12 human ships accelerated toward the center of the Krexmori swarm. Plasma bolts and bioprojectiles filled the space around them, but the human vessel's thick armor plating absorbed impacts that would have crippled the more elegant galactic ships. As they penetrated deeper into the swarm, the Krexmori creatures began behaving strangely. Instead of coordinated attacks, some organisms seemed to hesitate, others fired wildly, and a few actually fled from the approaching human ships. "Something's wrong with their hive mind," reported the science officer aboard the UES Defiance. "Our kinetic weapons aren't just killing individual organisms. The violent deaths are creating neural shock waves through their psychic network." Chen realized what was happening. The Krexmori had evolved to absorb and convert energy, including the controlled energy release of conventional weapons. But kinetic weapons created chaotic destruction that their hive mind couldn't process efficiently. "Admiral Morrison, I think we're causing systematic damage to their command structure. Every violent death is like feedback in their network." Morrison's response was immediate. "All ships. Maximum rate of fire. Target the largest organisms first. Let's see how much damage their hive mind can take." The human fleet unleashed everything they had. Railgun rounds, missile salvos, and explosive warheads created a storm of destruction in the center of the Krexmori swarm. Each violent death sent ripples of disruption through the hive mind, causing coordination failures throughout the formation. Within 20 minutes, the Krexmori swarm was in full retreat. The surviving organisms fled toward the outer system, abandoning their attack on the Kepler sector entirely. Admiral Zexathari's voice carried a note of wonder. "Human fleet, in 40 years of fighting the Krexmori, no one has ever made them retreat from a profitable system. What did you do?" Morrison's reply was simple. We gave them something they couldn't adapt to fast enough. Sometimes the old ways work best. As the human ships regrouped, Captain Chen looked at the tactical display showing the retreating swarm. This was just the beginning. The Krex Mori wouldn't give up easily, and now they knew that humans represented a significant threat. The next encounter would be different. 2 weeks after the victory at Kepler Sector, Admiral Zexthari stood in the war room of Galactic Defense Headquarters, staring at a holographic display that showed the changing tide of the conflict. The human intervention had been more successful than anyone could have predicted, but it had also escalated the situation in unexpected ways. "Admiral, incoming priority transmission from Earth," announced the communications officer. General Martinez appeared on the main screen, but his expression was more serious than during their first contact. Behind him, Captain Chen and several other human military officers were visible. "Admiral Zexthari, we need to discuss the current situation. Our intelligence networks have intercepted Krex Mori communications, and we've learned something disturbing about their next move." Zexthari leaned forward. The humans had proven remarkably adept at gathering intelligence in just 2 weeks. "What have you discovered?" Captain Chen stepped forward. "The Krex Mori have designated humanity as a primary threat to their expansion. They're not just adapting their tactics, they're preparing to attack Earth directly." The implications hit Zexthari immediately. "How large a force are they assembling?" "Our long-range sensors have detected a massive swarm concentration in the Vega sector," Martinez replied. "Conservative estimates suggest over 10,000 bioships, including several of their largest hive nodes. They plan to bypass the galactic defensive lines entirely and strike at our home world." The Galactic Admiral felt a chill run through his scales. The humans had saved the galaxy, and now they were paying the price for their effectiveness. "General, the Galactic Defense Network will provide whatever support we can, but our forces are still scattered across 17 sectors. We can't possibly assemble a fleet large enough to stop an assault of that magnitude in time." Martinez nodded grimly. "We understand that, Admiral. Earth's government has decided to handle the defense of our home system ourselves. With respect, General, even your impressive tactics won't work against such overwhelming numbers. The Krex Mori will have learned from your kinetic weapons by now." For the first time since their communications had begun, Martinez smiled. It was not a reassuring expression. "Admiral, you've seen what 12 human ships can do against a standard Krex Mori swarm. You're about to see what an entire planet of determined humans can accomplish when their home is threatened." The transmission ended, leaving Zexthari more worried than before. The humans had proven their courage and tactical brilliance, but courage alone wouldn't stop 10,000 bioships. 3 days later, his concerns seemed justified. Long-range sensors showed the massive Krex Mori swarm moving toward the Sol system at maximum speed. The hive mind had committed nearly a quarter of its total forces to the destruction of humanity's home world. Zexthari had managed to redirect 2 battle groups toward Earth, but they were still days away. The humans would face the initial assault alone. The attack began as the Krex Mori swarm entered the outer edge of the Sol system. Zexthari monitored the battle through long-range sensors and communication relays, expecting to witness the fall of humanity's home world. Instead, he watched something unprecedented in galactic military history. The Krex Mori swarm encountered the first line of human defenses near Neptune's orbit. What they found was not a traditional fleet formation, but a network of kinetic weapons platforms, automated missile batteries, and something the galactic databases had no classification for. "Admiral, the humans have converted asteroids into kinetic projectiles," reported the sensor operator. "They're using gravitational slingshots around gas giants to accelerate chunks of rock to incredible velocities." The first wave of Krexmori bioships ran directly into a barrage of weaponized asteroids, each one moving at speeds that turned them into system-killing weapons. The violent impacts weren't just destroying individual organisms. The kinetic energy release was so massive that it created expanding fields of superheated debris that damaged everything in their vicinity. But that was only the beginning. As the surviving Krexmori pushed deeper into the system, they encountered the second line of defense near Jupiter. The gas giant's massive gravity well had been turned into a weapon. Human ships had positioned nuclear charges at specific points, creating controlled explosions that used Jupiter's own gravitational field to accelerate debris at the approaching swarm. How did they calculate these trajectories so quickly? Wondered Zexthari's tactical officer. The mathematics involved should have taken months to compute. The answer came from intercepted human communications. Earth's entire global computer network had been converted into a massive tactical calculation system. Billions of people were contributing processing power from their personal devices to compute firing solutions in real time. The third line of defense was the most shocking. As the Krexmori approached Mars, they found that the planet's orbital defense platforms were not traditional weapons, but mass accelerators that were launching pieces of Mars itself at the swarm. "They're strip mining their own planet to create ammunition," reported the science officer with disbelief in his voice. The Krexmori, despite their massive numbers, were taking catastrophic losses. Their hive mind was struggling to process the chaotic destruction created by kinetic weapons on such a massive scale. But they pressed on, driven by their biological imperative to consume and convert. The final defense of Earth was the most human response of all. As the surviving Krexmori bioships approached Earth's orbital space, they encountered not defensive platforms or battle stations, but the entire human civilian fleet. Cargo haulers, mining ships, passenger transports, and even private yachts had been hastily fitted with kinetic weapons and were accelerating directly toward the invading swarm. "They're using ramming attacks," observed the tactical officer. "Those civilian ships are sacrificing themselves to damage the bioships." Zexthari watched in amazement as human civilians deliberately crashed their vessels into Krexmori organisms, creating massive explosions that cleared paths for the military ships following behind them. It was tactically brilliant and completely insane by galactic standards. But it worked. The combination of suicidal courage and kinetic weapons created a level of destruction that the Krexmori hive mind simply couldn't process. The survivors of the swarm, less than 1,000 ships out of the original 10,000, fled the Sol system in complete disarray. Captain Chen's voice came over the communication channel, her ship battered but still functional. "Admiral Zexthari, this is Captain Chen. Earth's orbital space is secure. The Krexmori assault has been repelled." "Captain, that was extraordinary. Your people's sacrifice and tactical innovation saved not just Earth, but potentially the entire galaxy. How did you coordinate such a complex defense so quickly?" "Admiral, when humans are fighting for their homes and families, we become something different. We don't just think outside the box. We throw the box into the nearest star and build something completely new." In the aftermath of the battle, the scattered remains of the Krexmori swarm tried to regroup in deep space. But something had fundamentally changed. The massive losses and the chaotic destruction had damaged their hive mind's ability to coordinate large-scale operations. Within a month, galactic forces equipped with human kinetic weapons and tactical doctrines were rolling back Krexmori territory across multiple sectors. The swarm that had seemed unstoppable was fragmenting and retreating. 6 months later, Admiral Zexthari stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the final Krexmori stronghold surrender. The galaxy-threatening crisis was over, ended by a species that most civilizations had considered primitive just months earlier. General Martinez appeared on the communication screen for what had become their regular strategic conference. Admiral, our xenobiologists have been studying captured Krexmori specimens. We think we understand why kinetic weapons are so effective against them. Please explain, General. The Krexmori evolved in a galaxy where conflicts were fought with controlled energy releases. Plasma weapons, particle beams, even nuclear explosions are all relatively organized forms of energy that their neural networks can process and adapt to. But kinetic weapons create chaotic destruction. The randomness actually causes feedback loops in their hive mind. Zexathari nodded thoughtfully. So their greatest strength, their collective intelligence, became a weakness when faced with weapons that created too much chaos for them to process. Exactly. And that taught us something important about galactic warfare. Sometimes primitive solutions work better than advanced ones, especially when the enemy has never encountered them before. As the transmission ended, Zexathari reflected on the past months. The galactic community had learned something valuable about the humans from Earth. They were not just another spacefaring species. They were survivors from a world that had forced them to develop unconventional solutions to impossible problems. The galaxy was safer now, protected by humans who thought differently, fought differently, and refused to accept defeat even when facing overwhelming odds. The reinforcements that had been requested from Earth had arrived exactly when needed, bringing with them something more valuable than advanced technology or superior numbers. They had brought the unbreakable will of a species that had clawed its way to the top of a death world and refused to surrender their place among the stars.